Welcome to the Power Up Podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Scullion. Join me for some powerful conversations with members of the Substation Design Solutions Industry Consortium, the SDSIC. I'll chat with members about the consortium, innovations, how they're implementing different technologies, even some of the projects they're working on to address the growing needs of our power grid. Today's guest is Shawn Weekly, Digital Transformation Architect at Power Engineers. Shawn is also one of the earliest members of the SDSIC, having helped us with many things through the years, and most recently as co-chair of the new Innovative Solutions Committee. Thanks for joining me today, Shawn.
Thank you, Trev.
So, as you know, this whole podcast idea is really to introduce some of the real senior members of our team and the SDSIC team, and I couldn't think of someone more senior. There's only a few others that have been part of the SDSIC as long as you have. So I'm really glad you're joining. And, try to kind of introduce different members to the entire community. So maybe we'll start off with a little bit of your background and your career.
Sure. I don't know how I feel about the whole being super senior. Not that, but we'll go with it.
Not an age.
All right. Let's see. I am Shawn Weekly. My career has mostly been in the technology field. I started off writing code for different industries. Maybe I think I'm rolling up on 23 years now as a software developer. Started off actually in the insurance realm, and then went from insurance to telecommunications, and then radio ratings, and I worked for AT&T and Bell South back in the day, and then eventually landed in software in the utility companies. Started off, I was working for Southern Company in their billing group, and then went from the billing group and went into design. And I thought that was a really fun leap for me, because prior to writing software, I used to be a civil surveyor and a drafter for a civil engineering company here in Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I used to swing machetes through the brush and run from wild hogs in Louisiana, and did all kinds of fun things like that. Got lots of stories from that.
Yeah.
But it was neat because, as a drafter and a civil surveyor, I actually have a little bit of insight into the whole loop, as in, here's these are the drawings that get created, and here's how they get used in the field, and here's the information on the drawings that's important and what's not. What the engineers and the people in the field use, and what we put on the drawings, and what that translates into is a lot of potential opportunities. Certainly
Right.
Things have changed, but they haven't changed that much, especially in the utility industry. We're probably, a good decade behind AEC industry here. But so software guy who used to do construction surveying and drafting.
Awesome. Yeah, I didn't know that, man. I didn't know about the surveying and all.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah. So that's it's pretty good. Software guy. Yeah. So probably one of the best coders I've ever come across. So yeah, software guy. Nice.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Come on, man. We've broken a lot of things.
Well, there is that. If we can count things I've broken, well, then I am an expert elite there. So.
There you go. Okay, man. So for a lot of the folks, say, new to the consortium and just starting to get involved, and as we're trying to step up and get all of our almost 1,700 members, and trying to get them more involved, I thought it'd be fun to talk about your background. And you got started so early with the SDSIC, and where you first got, I'd say, roped in, right? And into getting deeply involved.
Yeah. So I wasn't a founding member. I was actually working at Southern Company, and a couple of my peers. And so John Thomas, I think, was one of the first, presidents of the SDSIC.
Yeah.
Robert Stoves was actually my supervisor at the time, and I think y'all were working with Bob and and
Yeah,
John creating the first website. And I think we talked about it. It was like WordPress or something like that. And it was kind of a
that's
hot
right.
mess. And, and uh, Bob voluntold me and said, hey, come help work on this website for the consortium.
Ah,
And
yeah.
we
And that
kind of
was,
got,
yeah.
yeah, got looped into that. And we tried to fix a few things and we got some stuff working. I didn't really do much. I was just kind of monkey testing it at the time. But that was, I guess, in the 2015 timeframe, give or take.
Okay.
And so Bob pulled me in there, and then I got involved with the technology committee and wrote some white papers and some stuff that they're
Hmm.
probably still around. They might be on the old website or they might be templates out there, but
Yeah.
we were specifically looking for, we kind of started off looking in the technology organization around how do we leverage virtual machines and
Mm.
a new hardware and licensing and what different products are required for this solution to work. And we kept in mind document management, and in particular, how do we do document management with contractors? And we wrote a lot of papers there, and we came up with some pretty novel ideas. And
Yeah.
but I think over time, what we've technology's given us ways to solve those better,
Hmm.
which is what tech is supposed to do. And
Yeah.
so we tried to move the tech committee in the direction of how can we do things better and plan for the future. So instead of just adopting whatever platforms we had and whatever tools we had, how can we look ahead and pick and choose the right things to do for the right reasons? And
Right. Hmm.
I got picked as the tech committee chair in January of 2020, right before the
Hmm.
pandemic really settled in. And I ran the tech committee from 2020 of January to around December, January timeframe of 2022. And that's when I actually left the utility company and came to Power Engineers. Um,
Yeah. Right.
but my past and my experience specifically around software and solution architecture, um, I think was maybe helpful for the tech committee at the time
For
because
sure.
I just kind of I thought I had a little bit different perspective,
Hmm.
especially from a pure technology look in.
Oh, for sure. I kind of noticed on the very early monthly calls, it went from, as you said, from reactive to proactive, I guess, with the conversations you were having in the technology committee. You started to look for the newer versions of the newer tech that nobody was even looking at some of that stuff. So that was a nice change. So hey man, let's talk. Let's give a shout out to Bob Stokes because Bob was early on and
Yeah.
founding member and got a lot of the committees, the technology committee spun up. And it's funny you bring up the website because we were 16 people when we started. So like many small nonprofit, but we figured, hey, we'll just put up a website, 15 of us, hey, WordPress will be fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good way to share documents and things. And I think we hit like 20 and it was not scalable already. It was starting to fall apart on us. But yeah, Bob roped you in. I remember you helping us test and try to figure out what to do next on that side, like early on, trying to build a better website. So, and when you left Southern Company, you went to Power Engineers.
Yep.
And because of a charter change that was an excellent change that we did for the consortium last year, we opened the opportunity for consulting firms and service providers to the utilities to become co-chairs, which was awesome. So you got roped back in again.
Yeah. That, I guess we can talk about that for a second. So, especially for the tech committee, and maybe for this innovation committee that I'm a co-chair of now, um, the audience changed. It's one thing for, you've got a physical design committee and you've got an electrical design committee and you've got business strategy. a lot of those committees are mostly populated by electrical engineers or physical, design engineers, and they're users of the products and tools.
Mm-hmm.
They speak to it from a user perspective and from a engineering perspective. And there's a lot of those in the utility industry, right?
Right.
What there's a lack of is pure technology people in the utility industry. And maybe not a lack of it, but they just don't surface themselves a lot, right?
Right.
They just kind of, their heads down coding at a desk, and they don't get access to a lot of these committees and stuff.
True.
And so it was difficult. It was challenging to find members that could be in a leadership position in the consortium, because at the time you had to be an actual utility person, be a chair and a co-chair.
Right.
And we lobbied for that and said, okay, well, let's change that some and get at least co-chairs to be vendors or contractors or anything else that gives us access to a lot of the brain power that's floating around out there,
right?
So that we can have fresh perspectives. And the rules don't change. You still can't sell. You still can't, go out there and hawk your wares as a contractor. You're still there to be helpful to the industry,
right.
But let's at least get some, other eyeballs out there and other butts in seats.
Right. Well, it's been a great change, right?
Yeah, it's been really good. And I think you'll see that I think probably the majority of the co-chairs are from vendor companies or from contract companies.
Yeah.
Because that immediately opened the doors and like, well, heck yeah, if I can have a voice at the table and get in here and, provide my feedback and insight, then I'm all about it. And it's been really good. But the cutting edge of that, the flip side of that is that I got pulled back in and now I'm the co-chair of the innovation committee, which I don't mind, but
Yeah, but it's been really some great perspectives, because the contract firms and folks doing services for, 10, 20, 30 different utilities have a completely different take on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
They need to be more flexible and adaptive to the technology. They need to configure it for each, so they got a lot of different plays that they can bring to the table. So I think it's been great.
Yeah, that's a key important point right there, is that the contract companies don't have a single set of standards to offer, right?
Right.
And let me define standards here, because standards in a lot of places means, my design standards or my engineering standards. And the standards I'm talking about are process standards and CAD standards and configuration standards and what standard tools do I use and things like that. So there's an important distinction there between what standards mean, and contract companies have to deal with all of them,
right?
Because, if you're working for utility X or Y or Z or Q or, beta or whatever, every utility company does things differently, which we'll talk about later in, what potentially some of our biggest challenges are. But yeah, it's a good perspective to have, because you can't just land on one thing and say, this is the way I do it.
Right. And it's been, it's been very helpful even on the vendor side of things, or with Autodesk and Bentley and the SBS, like having a different perspective of being able to look at multiple ways that we have to implement these things. It's not just to come up with one standard and expect us to put that into the software.
Yeah.
So the big difference. So now at Power, you're one of those people now that's bringing that perspective of how you deal with all the different standards from all the different utilities. And I think you're, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a digital transformation effort on your part?
Yes. My current title is Digital Transformation Architect.
All right.
I think that actually translates into cat herder in languages.
Well said.
Yeah. Because the gingers, they're not very smart, but the domestic short hairs, they climb pretty good. Uh, so, yeah.
I think we could do a different podcast just on that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So what's interesting is that, I always had it in my head that we tend to start our digital transformation efforts with, this is the way we do things, and you start with this perception of, what you know.
Hmm.
And what I've seen over the years is that we don't know half of what we know, and we don't know what we don't know.
Beautiful.
So what we have to do in a lot of cases, and where the effort comes in, is just figuring out what all we do
Mm-hmm.
across all of our clients and across all of our users. And I think people are surprised about the breadth and width and depth
Mm.
of technology efforts that are going on to make the day-to-day job easier. People want to get things done faster and better and cheaper, and technologies are available for them. Unfortunately, we install like Excel and Access on people's machines at the utility companies and say, here's this hammer and the screwdriver, and they're like, oh, all right, I'm gonna build the crap out of something. And they do, man. Wow, I've seen some awesome spreadsheets that do crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And that's great. You solved a problem, but that might not have been the best way to do it, right? Because
Right.
now you've got this one Excel spreadsheet that you got to hand out and keep track of and send out to different people, and you send it to Susan and she's got a copy, and you send it to Frank and he's got a copy, and Susan sees a better way to do it. She tweaks the spreadsheet, but Frank doesn't have those changes because he doesn't have Susan's. He's got, Jim's, and it's just a hot mess.
Yeah.
And so, digital transformation in a lot of ways is, go get all three copies of that spreadsheet and pick and choose which ones solve the most problem, and then create a better tool in one place that people can do something with, and that you can't corrupt.
Right.
Because that's a challenge, is how do you stop people from being innovative, because you need those people to be innovative and to come up with good solutions. But you don't want to stop them from doing that, but you want to stop the technical debt. It's a constant bleed that, and you got to stop the technical debt, because people like me, or your operations IT people, with technology stuff, that's like having a baby, or getting a puppy. There's no end to that project. It's not like a design project where you're done, you design, you give somebody a bunch of drawings and you say, here you go, and you go on to the next project and you forget about those drawings until the next revision or something like that.
Right.
With technology stuff, you maintain it, you care for it, you feed it, you grow it, you buy it a car and you send it off to college, and
Right.
it's there forever. And if you've got 1,000 of these things, you've got 1,000 kids to take care of.
Right.
And nobody can take care of 1,000 kids.
Well, it's funny because I've been doing like tech consulting for 30 years, and I could count how many companies I've been to, and they point to that one computer over in the corner of the room that's got an old mouse pad on it, and they say, oh no, that runs all of our, whatever, some solution that they can't get rid of it, they can't update it, and they can't replace it.
Funny story. Funny now. It was a horror story for me. At the utility that I was at, we had a document management system, custom built, written in Perl, running on Solaris, and the primary servers that ran that system were Solaris machines that were 486 processors. Right, these were 486 megahertz CPUs with 2 gigs of RAM.
Wow.
and they just stack disks and things.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of terabytes of storage, but and they were so old you can't buy parts for them anymore. So we had to go, we were actually scouring eBay trying to find parts to replace these things when they died.
Yeah.
And they died a lot. So I mean, this still happens, and this was less than a decade ago. This was like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I got a job here at Power, was because we took that utility and we transformed them to a new digital platform. And
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously, I can't say that it was perfect, but it's pretty good. And it solves a lot of the problems and didn't take away any functionality. And that's another part of digital transformation is that you identify all these tools, whether they're old, new, borrowed, blue, whatever they are, and you figure out what parts work and what parts solve problems. And for the love, you don't take that away from people.
Yeah.
You let them still solve their problems. You just take the edges off of it and make it easier to maintain.
Right. Yeah.
You put lipstick on the pig and shine it up and you do something better with it, but you don't just execute the pig.
Well, it's funny because the spreadsheet itself, like, it's such a good prototyping tool for calculations and trying some things out, but this wasn't meant to be shared en masse and have it as like the standard, right?
Yeah, that is the way, man. That's I have seen spreadsheets that just tax the limit of what it can do. And you get formulas that are, so long that you just don't understand how it all works. And
yeah. Oh yeah. That's the nightmares with that, right? I mean,
it's kind of made me hate spreadsheets, to be honest. But they're a great tool. They solve a problem. And we just need to, we need to have better tools. We need to transform into something better.
right.
We need to quit using screw hammers, and we need to figure out what the right tool is.
Yeah. Well, I've had people supply, spreadsheets, and you get an engineer to give you some very specific calculations, and it's only one sheet. It's not the 15 you got to trace, but it's one with some comments, and it's an easy way to follow it through if you're trying to code something. So that part's helpful. But then after that, it needs to stop.
Yeah. Love, it needs to stop, please.
Yeah. Well, one of the, and I really regret that I forget who I read this from, but I read this quote. It's a great quote saying we're facing the silver tsunami, which means all of the folks retiring. There's like this big tsunami coming at us soon, right? And it's just, you think of all those spreadsheets that are sitting out there. Like, we need to capture that stuff before the folks retire. We can't get them back because they're gone fishing and they don't want to come back. Yep. It seems like there's that digital transformation part. Boy, it's I think we got some work in front of us.
Yeah, there's even companies out there right now that are trying to capitalize on that, right? I can think of one in particular. It's called Caltree, I think. And I think their mindset is, hey, all these people, all these billion spreadsheets out there with all these calculations in it, maybe go out here and put your calculations in this platform so that people can have them and use them and maybe even share them.
Yeah, smart.
It's a good business model because there's so much, knowledge that's wrapped up in this stuff and people are getting ready to retire.
Yeah.
And they ain't, if they're sitting on a beach in Aruba or somewhere and you call them up and say, hey, how's this spreadsheet works? They're gonna tell you to kick rocks.
Yeah. Or they'll come back at a different rate.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you, but it's gonna cost you a lot.
Yeah. So you want to talk about maybe some of the bigger challenges that you're facing in the industry now that you're going to all these different utilities and talking to all these different folks?
Well, we've talked about a few of them already, but I think probably one I can talk about here for sure is that, there is a perception that we are different. And the reality of it is I think we are probably a lot more similar than we think.
Mm.
You know, and when I say that, I'm talking about, the way we design a substation, or the way
Right.
we design and create a transmission line, or, a utility network in GIS, or, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody assumes that they're different, and they're not. You can distill down to a very common problem statement for all of those things. And you can distill down to a really fairly small subset of tools that will solve that problem. And I think that one of the challenges is making people understand that. Because if we could make people understand that we're really doing things the same way, we're all boiling water,
Right.
or, using a dam to turn a turbine, or steam to turn a turbine.
Mm-hmm.
And we're putting that, through some equipment, putting it on lines and getting it to my toaster.
Right.
That's obviously a really deep simplification, because
Sure.
it's a complex machine, but it's not,
Mm-hmm.
and if you can distill it down to that, I think you could come up with some really novel solutions that cut across the whole industry, and not just substation, not just lines, and not just distribution, and not just, I'm working at power, right? So, we don't just do electrical stuff. We do facilities, and we do environmental stuff, and we're still doing the same thing. So,
Right.
one solution shouldn't just be for, substation. It should be for the electrical industry, or the utility industry, or maybe even the construction industry.
Right.
I think if we can make people understand that, I think we'll see some changes.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great reason for the SDSIC in general, is having them all having conversations amongst. I mean, when you go to the meetings, you see 10, 12 utilities all talking about, hey, I have that problem too.
Yep.
Very common when you start digging.
Yeah. It's far more common than people give it credit for.
Right. Well, I remember reading a story with, I think it was Department of Transportation, and like you said, if you back out far enough and really take a look at the overall problem, it's a pretty simple problem. And talking about traffic, they said, well, traffic's not it's a problem that can't be solved with two dimensions. It's be the third. And you either go up or down. It's too expensive to go up. So like Elon Musk's doing boring underground. That's an oversimplification of the whole traffic thing. But boy, when you think about it, it's like, damn, that's pretty bang on.
Yeah. I mean, and, in reality, I read this some time ago. I think I read it in the context of agile programming, that if you look at every problem, with the idea that 90% of them can be solved with ridiculous simplicity, that the time that you save by doing that will give you all the time you need to solve that extra 10% that aren't that simple.
Nice.
They're simple problems, and we tend to aggregate them into one big gnarly, ball of wax, but just distill it down. They're simple problems. Turn the nut, turn on the computer,
Right.
do the small things. And then you take one bite of the elephant. You start at your toe, you work your way up.
Yeah, that's your coding background, man.
Yeah.
If we had to realize how much we had to code, we wouldn't even turn the computer on.
Yeah, for real. But you just get out there and you start with hello world and you work your way into it.
That's right. So do you want to touch on some of the kind of where you think technology is coming around electric grid and over the next couple of years? I won't say decade. Let's just do a couple of years.
I think first off, we need to try to catch up to the AEC industry. I think we're about, I honestly think we're, at least 5, maybe 10 years behind the AEC.
Good point.
And I think probably the biggest reason for that is that, and maybe this is controversial, but we don't have a unified data taxonomy, a unified data scheme. If we really look at the AEC industry, they landed on Revit as their tool du jour. But if you think about what Revit does, Revit is built on top of a common data taxonomy or common data scheme, the IFC classes, industry foundation classes. And everybody does it that way, right? Walls are walls and floors are floors and windows are windows and doors are doors. This is, everybody understands that and knows that. And because they have that common data platform, they can tweak the software to solve the problems because they're not trying to figure out what the hell a door is.
Right. Yeah.
And we can do the exact same thing in the utility industry. And as a matter of fact, we already have a common data taxonomy defined for us. And it's an IEC schema. It's called IEC 61970, the Common Information Model.
Okay.
And it's been out there for a long time. It's a maintained, used data standard. And now it's data standard is kind of maybe not the right word for SIM. SIM is more of a well, what it boils down to is actually a UML model that defines every piece of equipment in the electrical world, from wires to transformers to switches to everything, the whole 9 yards. It's
so like a unified modeling language, but for electrical.
Unified modeling language for electrical, and it has a defined XML schema for that UML model. And that's what's important, because if it's XML, that's text. That's a machine, that's a machine readable language.
Yeah.
And because that's machine readable, it was designed specifically for ADMS systems and, energy management systems and stuff.
Okay.
To move, data between these disparate systems. Vendor one creates this system for ADMS and it can't speak, whatever language that vendor two does. But they got to talk because we got them both installed at utility Y. So let's convert the data to a machine readable format, XML, and then let those two vendors fight it out. But really what the vendors are doing is just converting from that common format. If we could standardize on SIM, we could kick butt, I mean, and that would solve so many problems.
Right.
And the thing about it is it's already out there. It's a well-documented, IEC standard. It's really just making people see it and understand it and they say, oh, okay, I get it.
Wow. Wow. It sounds like we need a round table just on that in Nashville.
I actually did present that as a potential speaking point, maybe as a joint thing in innovation and business.
Yeah, perfect.
Maybe we can yak about it for a bit.
No, that sounds great. Yeah. No, I asked you about challenges. That would solve.
That would solve a lot of them, right? Because because right now, if you think about what we do, Inventor doesn't speak AutoCAD Electrical, and Autodesk doesn't speak Bentley, and Vault doesn't speak ProjectWise, and I don't know, all the ERP systems, right? SAP speak Oracle, and all the ADMS systems and GIS, and you throw all that stuff in it, all of them speak different languages. We're talking different countries around the world. And there's no common communication mechanism between them. Except there is. It's called SIM. We could be using it tomorrow.
Wow. And XML, just transform it with a style sheet into any format you want.
Right. And the cool thing about SIM, and this is what people don't understand about XML, you just brought it up. The SIM standard actually has models in it for drawings and documents and lines and points.
Oh, wow.
So you could actually save down a drawing as a collection of points and lines and geometry.
Nice.
It's XML. And then take it out and recreate the drawing. So if you think about, hey, I started this off as an Inventor drawing and I need it to be a Revit drawing. Let's export it down as XML and then turn it into a Revit drawing. That what I'm cooking here?
Oh man, that's beautiful. Yeah. And then we could just overlay all that data on top of the real world with
Yeah,
AR and
and
get rid of
and the
drawings.
data's yeah, and that's the point, right? Is overlay the data.
Yeah.
We take the points and lines that define the geometry of a transformer, but
Mm.
the operating characteristics of that transformer, that's literally just text. That's its high side, high voltage, low voltage, temperatures,
Yeah.
oil capacity, stuff like that. That doesn't technically go on a drawing. It doesn't need to, right? But
No.
it's important for operation. It's
Oh
important
man.
for maintenance. And
Yeah.
every
Even
bit of that can be stored in one single XML file. Now, obviously, it's going to start getting big. Let's XML,
yeah, that's pretty easy.
parse it up.
What you think you do IoT device and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff in
all
there?
of it. It's all in there, bro. It's
Mm.
every bit of it's all in there.
Wow. I love it. Well, let's make sure we get our live event in Nashville and get a whole room full of folks together.
Yeah,
Maybe we should get T-shirts made, start spreading the word.
yeah. Sim is the reason for the season. Yeah, we'll come up with something.
Sim is the
We need,
reason.
yeah, we need a avatar or
Yeah. Well, dude, we'll do that. How about the got milk question mark? Got
yeah,
Sim?
that's that'd be weird though.
Yeah, that would be weird. Yeah, someone will make something weird out of that. All right, man. So one of the great points you brought up is having a technology person's perspective in our industry, and being someone like yourself is hard to come by in our engineering and design world. So what kind of advice do you have? Any advice for aspiring tech guys out there that might want to come into our industry?
Yeah, get on in here. Quit that sissy.
Awesome.
Yeah, that there is more opportunity for software and creating solutions in this industry than people even understand. This
There you
is a
go.
target rich environment. And what we end up having today is we have people who they come out of college or they're engineers, and they already have this engineering mindset, this problem solving mindset, and they learn programming while they're in here, but they
Hmm.
they learn programming from a different perspective.
Right.
And I'm not saying that a lot of these guys are really good coders and developers, but some of them, they're writing code, or they're writing a feature, or they're writing a spreadsheet to solve a problem, and they're not applying software development concepts to it. Or
Right.
you say, hey, you wrote this in Python. Did you put it in source control? What's source control?
Right.
They don't understand those low level fundamentals that a software person does.
Right.
And we need those perspectives, and we need people to come in here, because these are really interesting and challenging problems. There's really deep technical stuff going on here,
Right.
and you can touch so many different, it's not just a .NET or a JavaScript or a Python, or you can use all of them and then some. Lisp, and Lisp is still being used in AutoCAD.
Yeah. Right.
I wished it wasn't, but
Still there.
it's still there, and
Yeah.
I'm still maintaining stuff written in Lisp. And
Don't touch that machine in the corner. It has a lot of Lisp on it.
yeah, that's where it's all at. Like, and Lisp is a great language, don't get me wrong, it's
It
great.
is.
The parentheses, oh
Counting parentheses.
yeah, and work out instead of in. No, my brain doesn't work that way.
No.
Uh,
Yeah.
but it's just, you can't swing a stick without hitting an opportunity here. And there's just so much and so many places that a good programmer in literally any language can plug in. There's software, SaaS platforms written specifically to solve engineering problems.
Hmm.
And you're going to write JavaScript to call into APIs, and then use this stuff, and take these drawings and documents and apply this metadata to it and transform them into whole different things. And it's just huge. People don't even understand how much work is available here for us.
That's great advice, and that's the reason for this podcast, man, to get that message out there and attract some of that talent. Because when I look at our industry, I think of all the cool things with AI and machine learning and everything. We have so much data. Like
Yeah.
this isn't I mean, Facebook, anything. I mean, it's not 20 years old. This is 80, 100 years of data out there.
Yeah, that's just what exists now. And then, you're throwing in the real-time sensors and the IoT stuff and all that. And,
Yeah.
Condition-based maintenance and analysis there, and opportunities for, hey, you put a temperature sensor on a transformer and you start seeing it trend up, and you don't know if it's, hey, my sensor's bad, or, my cooling's off, or maybe there's just a big giant wasp nest in the radiator that's stopping the fan from turning or something like that,
Yeah.
But that data, that's, every 30 seconds or every 10 seconds, it's taking a reading of a temperature
Right.
across all the transformers in my grid.
Mm-hmm.
That's an enormous amount of data. And all
Right.
those people who, really love data analytics,
Mm-hmm.
man, we got more than you can eat. Get one in here. Quit that sissy. Just do it.
Well, when you think like in an ever-changing world that is software development, or at least web coding out there, AI, machine learning, well, even the AR and VR and all this stuff that's going on, like, this industry isn't going anywhere. Spending the time to be involved here, then you're pretty much going to be guaranteed employment. You're not going to be looking around for the next startup.
If you want to keep microwaving burritos and watching Netflix, power is going to be necessary.
Yeah, there you go.
It affects, that's what's interesting, is that this affects me. I can, you can write solutions that affect you. Maybe it makes your power bill cheaper. Maybe it makes it, a shorter period of time when your power goes out. All that, there are things you can do in this industry that have direct effect to you and your grandma and, your auntie. That everybody's affected by electricity.
Yeah, so true. So true. Well, and being able to, write applications that can help overcome the storms and everything, right? We've seen everything across North America these days.
Yep.
There you go. That's great advice. Hopefully this will lure some folks in, Shawn.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, that was great conversation, Shawn. I really appreciate you joining, man. I know you're swamped at work and a lot going on, but I appreciate it.
No problem, man. Especially if I can talk shop and get people interested and get some more help in here. That's what it's all about.
That's great, man. I think that, hopefully that'll lure some folks in, and we'll get this up on LinkedIn and share it around with some of the career hashtags. Maybe that'll work.
Yeah. Career hashtags. You can always hit me up at LinkedIn. I try to keep at least some relevant communication out there. Some of it's just, cat pictures. But
burritos and Netflix.
Hey. But it's all relevant, right? It's all powered by electricity.
There you go. Next time you plug something in, think about the industry like this.
That's it. Because it's actually relevant. It's important.
Awesome. Hey, thanks a lot for your time, Shawn.
Yes, sir, man. Y'all take care.
All right, buddy. Thank you for listening to the Power Up Podcast today. If you enjoyed this conversation and you're not yet a member of the SDSIC, join for free at sdsconsortium.com. Be part of the community and all these great conversations. And maybe you'll be the next guest on the Power Up Podcast.